San Francisco, California, this is What's Left, a weekly political discussion challenging the mainstream left. I'm Eduardo Burke with Andy Lipson. Today, the topic will be a discussion around the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, the nominee for the Supreme Court Justice that was chosen by Donald Trump. So, there's so much to unpack here.
Yes, and we were supposed to do an interview with our friend Bruce Newberger, another socialist, but this is way too big to just let go. So
yeah,
we're gonna get into this. I'm sure we're gonna agree on everything.
We will see.
we're not really. I'm not even sure where this is gonna go today. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is, right off the bat, for me, as I was listening everything, one thing that I have always felt around the Supreme Court justices in general, it's very strange that your country, like this country, USA, holds a Supreme Court justice for life. That is so strange. In Mexico, where I'm from, we have we call them magistrates. The Supreme Court, federal judges.
We have magistrates here. Those are people just underneath or work alongside federal judges called magistrates. But yeah.
Well, there's 11 for our Supreme Court, and they are only 15-year term. And France doesn't do this. Even up north, Canada doesn't do this.
Right.
And I'm trying to figure out if there is any other country that does this. But it's just, it's really striking to me that you can leave someone there for life. That's just the thing that
I think that's the starting point for me too. This is the Supreme Court for life thing, as well as all the federal judges are for life, is a complete travesty of anything called justice. It partly explains why our justice system is so messed up, I believe. So that's one thing. What about the question of whether they're appointed versus elected?
Well, that depends. I have to do a little. I don't. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, but in here, they're obviously appointed by the president. Nominated by the president and appointed ultimately by the Senate for both the Supreme Court and for federal judges.
They're appointed as well.
Yeah. I mean, that is a travesty. They should not be appointed. These people should be elected. And 15 years is too long. Maybe 2 years, 4 years.
Yeah, it's just, it's not democracy.
No,
it's not democracy. And, that is the first thing I just wanted to start just about in general, the Supreme Court justice, the way that is. You have 9 here and they're for life. You've got one Supreme Court justice, Ruth Ginsburg, who is trying to live out her life as a Supreme Court justice because she's not trying to retire under this administration because she doesn't agree with the ideology. But that's what you have to do. You have to kind of go and continue to live throughout your career. It's just so strange to me. It's mind-boggling.
I think it's just not a question of strange. It's that if you had any illusion that we had a democratic system or an actual justice system that was controlled by its people, which they say happens because we have a jury of our peers. But no, the system is controlled by the lawyers and by the judge. And most judges are appointed. So, and particularly the higher they go up, they get appointed by even more and more close. Like the fact that the Senate and not the House has anything to do with it shows more and more that they basically have engineered this entire thing so that there's no Supreme Court, so there's no justice system.
Right. So let's go, I think, with the Democrats versus the Republicans, just to get kind of like a prompt, like a starter. So a couple weeks ago, Brett Kavanaugh was going through the panel of the Judiciary Committee, which was composed of 11 Republicans and 10 Democrats. And they asked him a series of questions, which, under oath, I think he is a liar because he had denied several things, or he's lied about his position on Wade versus Roe. He's lied about his White House under the Bush administration surveillance. And he even lied from the beginning when he was nominated by Donald Trump when he said that Donald Trump went through an extensive conversations with many politicians about selecting his nominee for the Supreme Court, when really there is a Republican, there's like a list of already readily groomed Justice Supreme Court list nominees suggested to the president and then interviewed by the president. There was no dialogue about trying to figure out what was the a democratically, like we had discussed, possibly one that could be appealing for both Democrats and Republicans and independents. What I'm trying to get at is that already from the start, I personally felt that this is just, of course, an ideological trying to pack the Supreme Court with conservative justices. That was from the start. And then the Democrats, of course, fiercely tried to fight it with all these questions, trying to ask questions that were discussing law firms, that were discussing positions on women's rights and positions on same-sex marriages and other positions, which I can go into detail, but I think that I just want to get to the breadth of just like his process was there first. That was the first segment of the process of Kavanaugh, and then came up some accusations. But I want to first, before we get there, any comments on that before we go?
Well, I completely agree with you that he's a liar. I have no question about that. I think anybody who sits in front of them in this process is going to be a liar. I think all these judges are corrupt. They're appointed. There's nothing to regulate them. He was a federal judge who had a lifetime guarantee of that at $200,000 a year, plus $28,000 for teaching at Yale. So no, I don't think there's nothing about him that says that he's not going to be lying in order to get what he wants, and in order to do what his side, the so-called conservatives on the Republican side versus the conservatives on the Democrat side.
Right.
Because what I don't agree with you on is that there was any sort of a fierce attempt to drag him down during those first sets of 3-day hearings that he had. I think if they wanted, they've already done this to one guy, and I'm going to mention that. The Democrats Party did take down a person before, Robert Bork, and they took him down on the basis of a strong, like you are an ideological extremist, and they could have done that with this guy. This guy is an ideological extremist against the environment. He is as a federal judge. It was like 17 out of 19 times he took positions against the EPA. That's the government position on defending the environment. You're against that. There are government regulations on corporations, consumer regulations, that I think 15 out of 17 times he has gone against the government's regulations for the corporation. He's an extremist. He's a corporate anti-environment extremist, and he's an anti-worker extremist, where again, I think it was 15 out of 17 times for laws, for things that would have affected workers, that would have made lives better for workers versus employees who were screwing workers at the time. 15 out of 17 times he found in favor of the corporation again. So this guy is an extremist. The Democrats could have called him out as that and canned him as that, which is what they did with Robert Bork. Ironically, Robert Bork was the guy who wasn't put in, but who was put in instead? Kennedy. Guess who's replacing Kennedy? This idiot Kavanaugh. So they've already gotten rid of one guy for extremism, But what did we get? We got Kennedy, who himself is an extremist. This is partly why I say this whole thing is a show, because even if we get rid of Kavanaugh here, we're just going to get some other clown who's going to be just as bad.
So you're saying that the Democrats already took someone down before?
They took the guy down who Kennedy ultimately took place. It was Bork. Reagan presented Bork in the 80s.
Bork, this was in the 80s.
In the 80s.
What was made up of Congress? Democrats mostly, or Republicans?
That would have been mostly, I don't know at the times. I don't know at the times. But I'm just saying that they can make that case here, and they didn't, because the issues you raised were ones he's able to walk around. He doesn't have to speak to his question of abortion rights. But they didn't go after his real record. That's what they needed to do, go after his real record as a federal judge, which is not up for debate. So that's what you would do if you want to take this guy down. But again, this whole thing's a show. This whole thing's about elections. It's
Well-
not about changing. It's not about protecting women's rights or protecting abortion rights. The Democrats have attacked abortion rights just as much. But the reason the Democrats didn't want to mention his record on those things is because the Democrats have a horrible record on that stuff, and they plan on attacking that stuff, and they've been attacking it, and they will continue to.
The majority of Democrats have come out against Kavanaugh and as well Gorsuch, and if you saw the record, the majority of Democrats that voted against Gorsuch, they were the very same Democrats that are considering voting against Kavanaugh. But when you say about Bork is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, in the 80s. I'm not sure how many Democrats were, because you have
In that case,
you
they
can't
got-
just take
yeah.
down a person. You cannot just say, you have to have a majority of a certain.
In the case of the Bork, some Democrats went for Bork, but then a number of Republicans went against Bork, and it was just that they waged a political campaign that embarrassed this
So
person.
it wasn't Democrats that had taken.
Democrats and some Republicans.
Right.
But again, I'm just saying that if they wanted to wage a campaign, a political campaign against this guy, you would have heard about all these other things that I'm talking about. We didn't. He was given a free pass on his actual record. So that tells me that they're not interested in doing this. The only way they're willing to do this is around this moment, around sexual assault. That's
In
it.
order to take down a nominee, Andy, you have to have votes. The
Yeah.
Democrats don't have those votes.
But I'm saying they didn't. But they didn't even wage a political campaign during the hearing, because none of the issues you're talking about were raised during that hearing.
They were raised a lot.
Very little. No, mostly was about gay rights. It's things he doesn't have to speak to. I don't have to get into how I would. That's mostly what he did. They asked him to speculate on what he would do, and he didn't do that. He didn't. He doesn't have to do that. But what about going after him for his real record? They didn't do that. You didn't hear that. The reason they didn't do that is because the Democrats know they're going to get you on the same stuff. So no, we don't. Well, we don't agree. The Democrats are not waging a fight against Kavanaugh or against the conservative agenda. This is a fight to see who will win the November 18 elections, and they're going to use this little show here in front of us to drive everyone either to the Republican parties again or the Democratic Party and make it seem like this is the biggest thing in history. But what's really happening is the capitalist class is winning out of this is winning because either workers are going for the Democrats or workers are going for Republicans. And that's what's happening here. So we're all being corralled into a pen that's called the November 18th elections and made to decide which side are you on. When there's no side in here. Both sides are attacking workers. And again, the fact that Bork, who was an extremist, went down, and what we got was this another guy, I can't remember his last name, Ginsburg, who smoked pot, so they canned him, right? And then we got Kennedy, who was an extremist, Muslim ban, against abortion rights, against environment stuff. I mean, again, this is what we got. And this is how this works because, as we said in the beginning, the entire system is corrupt. The entire system is not non-democratic, has nothing to do with justice. It's a political show.
All right. So I think we can agree that we are disagreeing on this because I honestly think that many of the Democrats are trying to block this nomination from this block the what do you call it after you nominated the
Well, they're trying to make it so that he is not able to be put forward as a
right. But
Supreme
what do you
Court.
call that? Like there is these
I don't
technical.
know.
Well,
I don't know.
Okay. Well, block it from becoming
His
a
appointment.
justice.
His appointment.
Yeah. All right. So, what I think that we're going to get into is though that once those were the processes for the Democrats and the Republicans to sort of like a job interview, the process was over. Then the allegation showed up, and this was 2 weeks ago, I think.
Was it 2 weeks? Okay.
Yeah, because it took the last Thursday. It was and then it was a week. It took a week for it. So 2 weeks ago.
And then subsequent allegations as well.
Yes. So, do you want to say anything about that before?
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, this allegation sprung up, and the Republicans are calling it a con job. They're calling it that it was a last-minute way to block Kavanaugh from being appointed, and that is where a whole series of other issues came up about Me Too movement, about even being an allusion. Is it allusion towards the Anita Hills?
Anita Hills, right? Yeah.
Anita Hills and Clarence Thomas. Clarence Thomas, and that was when I felt more interested, and because this is talking about a woman that is 100% certain that it was Kavanaugh who assaulted her when she was in high school.
Right.
And for me, this was one of because I did not live through the Anita Hill, like Clarence Thomas, where I wasn't conscious of that until all of this started showing up. I had known that this had happened because I'd seen a documentary, but really during the times have changed in the Me Too era. So I was very curious how this was going to be taken up in politics, to see if she was either going to be shut up, like to degrade her and her allegation, as well as to see if it would have some effect in the political arena and our psyche about what we think about women coming forward, because it takes courage. So, you want to say something?
No, I mean, I agree that this has become now a Me Too moment.
Yeah.
I believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. Christine Blasey Ford.
I believe her as well.
I do believe her. I mean, and it's not a question. Well, it is a question. I mean, what she said made sense, and it's like we've heard these things before. And one of the big accomplishments of the Me Too movement I feel like, has been two things. One is it's made people aware of the scope and scale of sexual harassment and sexual assault that it's been mostly talked about in terms of women that they've experienced. And secondly, I think it's made it so that it's very hard now to just do what was done in Anita Hill and said, oh, she's just making it up. Or, well, I'll remind you, this was done by the Democrats with Paula Jones. It was done with Juanita Broderick, who accused Bill Clinton of raping her, and Hillary Clinton came out and said she's a liar, essentially, right? That was the Democrats back in the 90s doing that. Back in those days, Democrats and Republicans all engaged in that kind of stuff. And it is what women have experienced, and I do think, unfortunately, will continue to experience, but the Me Too movement has taken a chip out of it. The thing I'll say is that I believe that the Me Too movement is not helped by this, or I don't think it is. I think the Me Too movement is being co-opted right now by the Democratic Party.
You need to expand.
Well, there's two different ways the Me Too movement can go at this point. It can sink its roots deeper into the working class, talking about women in prison, talking about women in janitorial services and transportation services, the sexual harassment and assault that women face in detention centers, around the expansion of anti-immigrant attacks under both Democrats and Republicans. And it can expand into talking about the sexual assault that men have experienced as well. So Me Too can actually include both men and women as part of this whole thing. That's the direction I personally believe that's the direction Me Too would need to, because currently it's been largely in academia, Hollywood, up in those
Although we
areas.
should say that Me Too originally was not all of that. At first, it was by this African American woman that had started that that movement, but it was very small.
The one I remember is Alyssa Milano putting out her text. She was an actor.
Yeah, but even before that.
Yeah, and I'm not maybe as aware of that, but I'm just saying the popularization has been largely among that group. I think the future of it would lie in sinking roots deeper into the working class of working class women who don't make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, but who make who get minimum wage. But I also was talking about the effect of men who are experiencing sexual assault, which turns out a study came out and said that just as many men, there was this woman, Dr. Schempel, I think her name is, found, just looking at national statistics, that just as many men, about 1.2 million, have experienced non-consensual sex as women. And not all, in fact, the majority of them experience that from women. So it's just to say that sex and sexual assault includes a whole wave of women and men. And those, to me, that's the direction Me Too has to move. I think what's happening is the Democrats are grabbing a hold of the Me Too movement and driving it to the polls. That's what they're trying to do here. I think they're going to be successful and trying to get it so that the Democrats are seen as the ones who are going to defend women, when they have been just as aggressive in attacking women as the Republican Party, and have been just as guilty of accusing women of being, liars around this as Republicans. So, again, if the Me Too movement puts its faith in the Democrats as a result of what they see around Kavanaugh, they're going to get a bum deal. But I do think it's going to work. I think it will drive people to the polls on the basis of their association and solidarity with Me Too. But I think you're not getting what you think you're getting. You're going right into a person who's dedicated to attacking workers, dedicated to attacking women, and they're going to continue it under the Democratic flag versus a Republican flag, because, well, I just think both these parties are not interested in helping women or men, workers of any sort.
I should point out, though, when you talked about men and women on this national study that you pointed out, socially, though, in our society, men are, I would argue that, more encouraged to behave in a way that is trivializes sexual assault, trivializes sexual harassment, and even encouraged to pursue it to prove themselves in their manhood. So there may be just as many, but socially I think men are groomed to believe that it's the victim blaming is very prevalent in our society as a whole.
Right.
And even just globally, I think that women have been oppressed mostly by men and trivialized around the world. And rape culture is very prevalent globally. I just think,
of course. But again,
yeah, I'm not saying anything that you didn't argue against it or for it. I'm just pointing that out to also.
But I of course I agree with that, but it doesn't change the fact that I think the success of the Me Too movement would be in expanding its base to actually encourage, because the problem with the issue with men is that this stuff doesn't go reported because men are ashamed of this. Men are ashamed of this kind of stuff, and because they're supposed to all be wanting sex and being, it's supposed to it's something I wanted, right? And again, sexual alienation under capitalism, not a surprise. That's part of this. Gender roles, not a surprise. This is all something we should. But it's just to say that my feeling is, Me Too has a chance to expand its base if it sinks itself deeper into the roots of the working class, into the lives of average working class women and average working class men through these sorts of calls. What's happening right now is it's actually getting sealed up into the Democratic Party, and they're going to use it for their election purposes, and then they're going to throw these people away like they didn't. After this is done, they're throwing them away because they're going to go back in on the attack again, whether it be through wars, whether it be through attack on abortion rights, whether it be through attack on healthcare, whether it be attack on welfare. Welfare as we know it was attacked by Bill Clinton, the abuser in charge, the dude who was defended by other Democrats, even feminists, because of his attacks on women. That guy removed welfare as we know it so that women today can't get access to food stamps for their children or access to government subsidies for when they're unemployed or where they need money. So I'm sorry, it's just like I think what's happening here is very dangerous for the Me Too movement, or rather, it's going to put it in a situation where it corrals it into the pen of the Democratic Party, and I think that's very, very bad for the movement.
I'm not saying it is not related. It's just I think that it's a whole nother can of worms to open up that we can discuss at a separate time.
Which one?
This Me Too movement.
Oh,
because it is. We're talking about Bill Cosby with the recent sentencing, and then there's Harvey Weinstein and all that. And I think that there's just a lot to cover there.
But I agree that you can't bring up this case around Kavanaugh without talking about the Me Too movement.
It's not related. I'm saying
it's completely related. It's putting it right on TV. There it is, and it's right. What is good is that this question of this woman being able to be challenged for what she's saying is being challenged. Like this whole notion that she's lying or da da da. People are having to be defensive about this. Even the conservatives are having to say, well, I'm not saying she's lying. I just think she got the wrong guy. Right? which is not what they said about Anita Hill. She's just straight up lying, you know. And it's not what they said about the woman who raped, that Bill Clinton raped, Juanita Broderick. They said she's lying, you know. Oh, she wanted it. That's Democrats saying that, okay. So in this case, people do not feel so empowered to do that. And that's a positive thing. But I'm telling you that the future of this movement, if it was to have a future, if it's to have a radical future and a future that will actually transform society, it has to get itself out of the Democratic Party, and the Democrats are collecting it now for a victory that is no victory. Because here's the other thing. There's no victory here. If Kavanaugh gets in, there's no victory. If Kavanaugh doesn't get in, there's no victory. Because basically you're getting it, like I said, that's what Bork says. If you don't get Bork, you get the guy who smokes pot. If you don't get the guy who smokes pot, you get Kennedy. That's what's going to happen. If we don't get this guy, we're going to get some other flunky. And he's going to go sailing through, or she's going to go sailing through, and it's going to be the same old, same old. The only victory that could actually take place is after these people get in, and when they try to do stuff, we fight them. Because that's the only way this goes down. Nixon tried to stack the Supreme Court with a bunch of right-wing judges, and the women's rights movement, you know, thundered on, and basically we got Roe v. Wade under a Nixon Supreme Court stuff. And in the 30s, under Roosevelt, when you again had judges, Supreme Court judges, who didn't want anything to do with unions, who were going after unions, you know, time after time after time, going pro-corporate against the union, a whole sit-down strike waves, basically, after about 3 years, made the Supreme Court finally say, okay, we're going to recognize unions' right to organize through the NLRA. All right, that's where the victories are going to be had. Whether or not Kavanaugh is appointed has nothing to do with the victory. Or it's the only victory the only person who's gaining out of this is the capitalists right now, because they're corralling everyone into the Democratic and Republican Party. And that's and making us think that what we're watching is something that has to do with justice, with both you and I talked about in the beginning. There's nothing to do with justice. This is a permanent appointee. He should be elected, and he certainly shouldn't be appointed by a president or a Senate where all those people are corrupt and are pro-corporate. We want justice for the people. So the people should decide who the judges are, and if we don't like the judges, we should unelect them. So it's a complete sham show.
Yeah. My suggestion for all of this is, if the Democrats were to be radical, if they get the majority, or independents get into, and they make up the majority in Congress for the Senate, they should pack the Supreme Court. They can do it. They can have more than 9 justices. And just like the Republicans were packing conservative justices, unless they decide to change the terms of how long a Supreme Court justice can stay for, I don't know how that process would work out. But the Democrats, the independents, whoever is going against the conservative ideology that is being placed and being have in the Supreme Court justice, they should just pack the with more justices and even out the ideological balance in there. That is my opinion that they should do. The other thing is, I think that the Kavanaugh hearings should be the Kavanaugh hearings. The allegations against Kavanaugh the FBI should have gone rogue like they do with everything. How come they have done this with a lot of other cases? They should have gone rogue and done the investigation without waiting for Trump to give the go.
And now they're going for like a week.
Exactly. And
you can't make an investigation of something 30 years but for a week.
The investigation. So I felt that that the FBI is also another pawn in all of this, where they should have just tried to, if they hear there's an allegation, even though they had already made 6 background checks on Kavanaugh, they should do another full one, and they should just try it out. Take this case seriously and do an investigation. I believe Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, because she had already she had already stated in 2012 what she had said to her therapist. And she was not there. She was there as an independent, making her civil duty be known. And she was not being used. Maybe the Democrats could have used her. But she herself, as a person, as an individual, Andy, she herself decided to come forward. Not for any gain, but because she thought that this would be helpful in the process. And the tactic and the strategy that the Republicans took was to ignore her. They hired a prosecutor,
that woman, Mitchell,
a Republican, who's a sex crime prosecutor.
Yeah.
They hired her because I'm sure they didn't want to be on any Democrat ads for sexual harassment.
Right. Bad optics.
Yes.
Yes.
So they hired another woman, pitting women against the look of that, combing through her allegation and almost discrediting her by going through. She did this. What do you call that? Polygraph, and asking who paid for it, it just making her almost to feel like there was someone behind all of her allegation, as a con job, as they had put it. And I'm in full support that an FBI, as much as this is hard for me because I normally do not like the FBI in a lot of things,
right.
but the FBI should go through this, and it should not take a week. There should be more, and currently there are people trying to push for a longer investigation for it. So I wanted to bring that up, and I do think this is different, but people discredit Christine Blasey Ford because it happened 35 years ago, because it happened during high school. I think that a lot of people just want to dismiss it. And, how long did it take for Cosby to be indicted?
Mm-hmm.
40, 30 years?
Mm-hmm.
How long did it take for Harvey Weinstein? 30 years?
I don't think he's been indicted, but...
Do you know what I mean? Like, how long did it take?
Mm-hmm.
And how long do these investigations take?
Mm-hmm.
And people are just trying to keep 1 week. That is not enough time. And I just felt like she was being used in a way that was not, that both parties are trying to fight for the midterm elections,
yes.
and she is in the midst of all this,
yes.
and she is just trying to independently do what is right as a person in society. So I'm pointing it out because there's a lot of flaws in this political system where she's being discredited, the ideological agenda is being pushed, and women are being, okay, you can speak, but you are also going to be ignored. So this, like, I'm listening, but I'm not listening to you attitude that is being kind of demonstrated. These men, there was something else I want to bring up as you were talking. These men, this frat culture, this Mark Judge, who wrote this book, this memoir about his college and high school days, and Kavanaugh even had said when he had visited the private school, what happens at this institution stays at this institution.
Right. He gave a talk there, right?
Yeah.
Several years ago.
And the dean had reminded him of that. This culture of this frat culture and the blacking out. Every time Kavanaugh was giving an answer to the Democrats questioning him, he had to give his answer in context of who he was, saying he was a schoolboy, trying to do well, had service projects and church going, without giving a rough answer and denying and or omitting information. It is what these. And this happens in the UK and in Mexico as well, with Enrique Peña Nieto, and in the UK as well with David Cameron, where these, and it happens, I'm now starting to be more privy to it. Being more privy to it is that these private elite schools that groom children to adolescence to become politicians. This is the elite class trying to have specific people in government to rule the entire nation with an ideological background, whether it be Democrat or Republican, but this is only privileged people that are groomed to be into the politics. And this just shows how there is no there is not really representational democracy, representational elected people, politicians in the Senate or Republicans or in just our government in general. And that came out in all of this. I've noticed that was an observation I had taken that resembled to Mexico as well, where the people who are in government also come from very privileged backgrounds. And I now being more privy to it in this government that exists here. And so I decided that may be fitting into this context as well that we're talking about, because it came out from his Kavanaugh's background. I don't know if you want to make any comment about that.
I mean, I guess I would say that I agree that both at the level of the Republicans and Democrats, these are just rich people.
Yeah.
Rich people raised in rich environments.
In the UK, they have boarding schools that they're...
Yeah, it's basically a boarding school environment on both sides. And so I agree.
And frat culture.
Yeah, that, but also just wealth and not caring about the lives of working people, and that includes the lives of working men and women from both sides. Both parties have shown a complete disregard for caring about the lives of working men and women and what they really go through. And it's a result of how they're raised, in part. Predominantly, it's mostly the political system that encourages it because it's all about profit. And I agree with you that I guess I'll just say Dr. Ford, is it Blasey?
Blasey Ford.
Yeah. I agree with you that I believe her. I don't know what her reasons for coming forward at this time are, but I do believe them. I believe her story, and I believe that Kavanaugh was part of all that nonsense and tried essentially I can't convict him with a statement, but yeah, I believe he was attempted rape. Basically, is what he would be accused of. I think that accusation is right, and he should be tried.
And it looks like the Republicans have caved in for FBI investigation.
No, they have not caved. The Democrats are delaying it partly, and this is where we disagree.
Wait. I had just looked, and I had an update that they are doing an FBI investigation.
Yeah, but it's going to be a week, and that's what I'm saying. Is like this is part of the show, and that's not an investigation.
I see what you're saying.
So second, the thing I want to say is so Dr. Ford's intentions I can't really impugn here, but I can impugn the people who are behind this, and that is the Democratic Party. The state is actually behind this, having a fight out over who's going to take. This is a fight being used by two powers that have no interest in women's rights, in dealing with actually taking on the issue of sexual assault or sexual harassment or anything like that. This is a fight between two parties uninterested in that, but are going to use this woman's case as a springboard for the fight, and are going to either collect. The Democrats are either going to collect the votes of people who are concerned about these issues and think the Democrats are trying to wage the fight. They've kind of got you half on board right now, right? Oh, they do, but I'm just saying it's been effective. They've got people thinking, oh, they're trying to wage the fight, but they can't. They don't have enough people. No. I think they haven't waged any sort of fight that you would wage if you were going to make this a political campaign and try to put a stop to it. So that's the first part, which is not just the first part.
Do you think that the Senate should pack in more justices?
It doesn't matter. It's the whole show up there. The Supreme Court is an illegal body of people who get to stay there forever, and they're appointed by the richest people in the world. Or if you're not the richest people in the world, people who are essentially put there by the richest people in the world, and we don't get to elect them. So forget them. None of them are going to get justice. The only way we get justice is we fight them after they take power. That's it. But believing that we can do something here in the confirmation process, we lose either way by focusing on this confirmation process as, I want this to happen versus that to happen. We lose. If Kavanaugh gets appointed, we lose. If Kavanaugh doesn't get appointed, we lose. That's the situation. Because this whole thing is set up against us with regards to the Supreme Court. How do you remove a Supreme Court official? Do you know how you remove a Supreme Court official?
In this country, I don't know.
You got to be impeached. How many times has there been an impeachment of a Supreme Court person in this country?
None.
Well, there's been one. There's one. 1811. This guy James Chase. 1811. Thomas Jefferson tried to impeach him. Did impeach him. He tried to impeach him because he was a Federalist. All you people who love that play Hamilton. Hamilton is a Federalist. What Thomas Jefferson was was afraid of was that
You're not going to have any allies. I can just see this.
well,
right now.
what Thomas Jefferson was afraid of is that these Federalists, like this guy Chase, were trying to put more and more power into the government and against the popular revolutionary sentiment that existed still in the 1800s. This is around 1811, okay, only 30 years after the Revolution. And so he wanted to get this guy impeached. He impeached him. They got him impeached. Guess what the Senate did? They said, we're turning it back. He gets to be a judge for the rest of his life. So the Senate went against Jefferson's push for an impeachment and the impeachment. And it just shows the corruptness even back then among your forefathers, the founding fathers. You know, who it's only gotten worse since then, folks. So to think that this Supreme Court putting anyone there, I don't care if it's Ginsburg. Ginsburg is going to go after workers. I don't care. You give me a name of any one of these 9 people who are up there. They all hate workers. They all hate the fact that they all love profits. They're all for corporations. Every last one of them. Every one of them. You give me a name of one Supreme Court justice that you think likes workers, doesn't come from some elite place, and is not anti-union. All of them. So none of them are for us. The only way we're going to take them down is by striking
a Supreme Court ruling on the union and labor laws, and there was Sotomayor and there was Ruth Ginsburg that had a dissent, even though I remember I do not know the details right now.
You think Ruth Sotomayor is for workers? You think when workers go on strike, she's going to be like, no, don't allow the police to go after them. No, don't allow the National Guard to go after them. You think that's what she's going to do?
I'm not saying
she's not going to do that. I am saying it. I'm saying we have to get straight about who these people are. But none of them are our friends. And until we do that, we're going to get played over and over and over again. You want more than just little crumbs that Sotomayor says, oh, I'll give you a little bit of this. You want more than that. Don't accept that.
Yeah.
And by accepting, this is what's happening with this whole Supreme Court thing, is they're getting us to lower our horizons right with it. Because the Supreme Court's going to mess us up no matter what. And we know we can't get anything from them. Mm-hmm. So, I'm sorry, it's just this is a kabuki theater made to make everyone think that your government is somehow working and that you have a stake in one side or the other of the Democratic Party and Republican Party. And I'm not talking about just workers who go for Democrats. I'm also, of course, talking about workers who go for Republicans. We are all being corralled into the same pen, which is the pen that puts us underneath the capitalist flag. And we can't do that. And well, that's what's happening. And that's why I'm so in despair for the Me Too movement, because it's kind of been hijacked by the Democratic Party. There's probably not enough leadership in the Me Too movement to stop it anyway, but mostly people are like, okay, I guess if we're going to use the Me Too movement to stop Kavanaugh, it's worth it. Folks, it is not worth it, right? Because you gain nothing, but you lose your movement, and you lose its independence. So, no, I don't think it's, this is all really bad what's going on, but not bad in terms of Kavanaugh. It's bad because this woman's cause is being used. The issue of sexual assault and sexual harassment is being used right now for something that is not going to help us in either way, stopping Kavanaugh or getting Kavanaugh in. The only thing that will help us is empowering men and women at the ground to fight for their rights. And that means striking. And I guarantee you, all those 9 justices, if we have the kind of strikes we're really going to need to have in this country, all 9 of your justices, Ginsburg on down, is going to be coming out lockstep against them and trying to figure out how they can justify going after unions. If my union tries to do a solidarity strike, if another union goes on, I guarantee you they're going to say, yeah, Taft-Hartley. Taft-Hartley says you can't do that. We're going to throw you in jail. We're going to take away your accreditation. If I go on strike, not just for teachers here, what if we tried to go on strike for teachers in Oaxaca? What do you think they would do then? You think Ginsburg's going to help me then? Sotomayor? No, she is not.
They're confined within the government system.
You're making excuses for them again. They're not. I mean, if there's positions of power, they do something.
Right.
Stand up for something. So no, yeah. I don't accept it.
Well, I mean, I think we can discuss what justices are supposed to represent. I think that obviously every justice has an ideology. They're biased. Yeah. Everyone, they're human. Everyone is, but you're supposed to have some level of.
Do you agree they all come from these elite schools?
No. They do not all come from elite schools.
Almost all of them.
No, they do not all. If you look at Sotomayor, she didn't come from an elite school.
Not sure where she comes from, so I'm not sure. But I don't see her as an ally for us.
She worked in working class neighborhoods, and she worked. I mean, even Ginsburg. I mean, they have backgrounds. They didn't come from elite schools. But the point is that we can discuss the Supreme Court justices. I really wanted to discuss the Kavanaugh. And I think that one thing other I wanted to point out is that Kavanaugh came out very fiercely, and when after he was being the second time around, he was being interviewed again.
Right. When he has a response to Ford's allegation. Yeah, testimony.
And he came out very strong, and I think it just shows it showed his true colors for who he is. But I also think that there were lots of people in the people in government who saw him and felt like this is not just a threat towards Kavanaugh, it's a threat to myself, because I see myself in Kavanaugh, especially men who are the majority who are Republicans are men. The majority.
Republicans?
The Republican Senate, yes.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
Right.
The majority are. And they saw themselves, especially when they come from the very similar backgrounds that Kavanaugh had come from. So, of course, they wanted to have this, Kavanaugh to have this anger and to be displayed, because it was a threat to them and to their institution, to the way that things have run for the boys' club. But I also think that at a deeper level, it is fear. And I think that there is a fear that comes with me too, that people are not complacent anymore, and that women are not going to be ignored anymore, and that women are coming out, and even if they don't have very strong memories about every single detail that is being required of them to come out of the dark about their harassment. I think that women are now seeing this, and there was lots of calls that were being into the White House, into the C-SPAN, I think it was, and lots of people who had also gone out to protest, and who had also stopped senators in their tracks on the lift for Jeff Flakey, when the two women had told him, and that could possibly have changed his mind when he was thinking about FBI investigation, and he brought that up. But it is women, not just women, sexual assault survivors that are coming forward, and I think it is strengthening. Somehow it's going to, my belief is that yes, the Democrats are hijacking it or using it for the midterm elections, and for in general any kind of elections for themselves, to show themselves as the better party. Yes, I agree with this. On another note as well, just on the grassroots level, I think that it is empowering lots of people to come forward to also stop that. There's a culture that is rising from this, that I'm not going to allow myself to be quiet anymore. And we can see this happening as well with the recent indictments that were done on the priests with the Catholic thing that came out in Pennsylvania?
This I'm not familiar with.
But it happened. There was the Vatican now is facing lots of priests in the Catholic branch that are now being imprisoned and paying forward. So I think that on the grassroots level, I think that it is on individually for all of it, not individually for on the cultural level, it is giving us more strength so that we can fight this idea that we have to be quiet and be in the dark about what has happened to us.
I wish you were right. I hope you're right, but I don't think you're right. I don't think you can strengthen
This is where we have switched, where you're cynical now, and I am.
Well, I don't think you can strengthen the hand of the Democratic Party and simultaneously strengthen the hand of a women's rights movement, or a movement for sexual liberation, or for stopping, the assault on men or women of any sort.
I'm not saying stopping.
It's
going
yes,
to continue.
But or putting
harassment, sexual assault will always. I think once we have sick people.
But you're saying building a movement that can fight those sorts of things.
But I think that it is being.
You're saying that movement is being built by this.
30 years ago,
yeah,
when we had women speak out, people were afraid to speak out because they were not believed. Today, we can have people, and I hope this initiates with this era that is
what I would hope
people's time is up, and that we have to have more fierce courage to be able to talk.
I hope you're right as well, but I'm saying I see it as being that sentiment, which was is authentic and has been developing for the last year is now being corralled into the Democratic Party and is going to be made about, if Kavanaugh does get appointed, it's going to be like, oh my God, this is an outrage. We've really got to get the vote out in November. And if he's not appointed, we're like, we won here, turn out the vote. It's being corralled here. And so I don't think you can have it both ways. In my opinion, you can't have it both ways. You can't simultaneously build a movement and build a Democratic Party because they're in opposition to one another. That's my belief. But I get it. People don't believe that because they believe.
I wasn't saying the Democrats are not corralling. Of course, I can see that they are using this for their advantage.
And it's working. I mean, it's you are becoming in front of me.
But I'm not talking about the Democrats, Andy. I'm talking about the sentiment and the climate that has changed. Just the climate in general around people and courage to speak out about their past. I think that is not at the institutional level. I'm talking about at a cultural, societal level.
Yeah.
This is gaining some, I'm hoping, more momentum, and for people to come forward.
For a set of people, I hope so.
As a society, not at the institutional level.
But as a society, that includes women in prison right now. That includes immigrant women. That includes women. Like, again, I want to, and that's the part where I question. I question if it's sunk those roots deep into society in the way that I was hoping it would or could.
I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so I'm trying to understand what you're saying. Maybe I'm not understanding.
I think you are. I think we just disagree. I mean,
but like what? Okay, moving up the chain and moving down the chain. What you finish on your thought?
I feel like that the place where people are starting to see this is fought out is up the chain, not down in the trenches of the workplace, at the restaurant level, at the hotel service, at the service industry level, in Target, at Walmart. So people are going to see this as something that is fought. Harvey Weinstein and Brett Kavanaugh, and it's a fight taken up by the ruling class to basically search and destroy one another, rather than something that's actually essential for workers and for working class women and men to talk about in terms of both the experience of women at the workplace, but also I do think there's solidarity that can be had between men and women when we actually talk about sexual assault, because it's actually experienced on both sides. And that's something that I think, unfortunately, again, the Democrats are going to benefit from it. One of the other things about this election is the Democrats have put up a record number of female candidates this round, and they're doing this very intentionally to collect women's votes, and with the idea that if we put forward women candidates, we are actually going to be able to put forward the idea that we will help women. We are the party that are progressive in that regard. And again, that is the trap of identity politics that I do think we're going to fall for, and I do think it's a deadly trap. Barack Obama did not help black people. Hillary Clinton was not going to help women. More women or more people of color in the Democratic Party just means more women and more people of color in a capitalist party going to be screwing over women and men and people of color within the working class, and doing it with the justification of like, I had to, or this is the best compromise I can give, but still support me. And it will keep workers in a state of like, well, I will still not fight for myself because I'm being screwed over by a person who looks like me. And that's just a dead end. So the left is very, very politically weak. And this, I do think we're going to fall for this. We're falling for it right now, but I feel like there's nothing here for workers. There is nothing here for workers with regards to what happens to Kavanaugh. We just need to be prepared to fight it no matter who gets put there, because the Supreme Court is an anti-working class, anti-democratic, anti-justice system that we have to oppose and dismantle ultimately.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking about what you were saying, and I do think that when I agree with you that when an actress, a Hollywood actress, comes out and says that she has been harassed, she will still have hold job and she will still make the millions.
I think it took courage.
Like, that there is a privilege to be able to speak as well with that courage, that you have this net of security, and that women at in the working class level, that yes, if they say something, they are an inconvenience. And so I do think that. I think that what I'm trying to communicate is that my hope
Yeah.
is that the Me Too movement builds outside of institutions, because the institutions will not give you this hope that we expect to have, and that this could trickle down everywhere, whether it be for people, because women are humans, men, women, anyone, that sexual assault survivors, upper class, middle class, lower class, be in solidarity against sexual assault, men and women. And what that is what I suppose I was trying to say. But I agree with you that ultimately that people are swayed into political sides with this movement, because they see saviors and heroines and people that look like them in a capitalist society that is rigged, and that they are trying to, yes, I think, and that is why I'm hoping that people find that it is really dependent on us, and that we try to seek out ways to take care of our own as people, as trabajadores, as obreros, like this working people, so that we can fully support ourselves and create services for ourselves, and not dependent on that. Yes, I agree, and I mean that is. I think that the talking of this at the higher level with people who have a bigger microphone, like celebrities. This is what I was trying to say. Is the initiation, hopefully, of that, because they have a larger audience to talk. They can talk. They can just type something up on Twitter, and it is heard by many people. And that is what I'm saying. That I think that this Me Too movement that is actually did not start from the top, because I said there was this other woman, that African American woman, that has gone unacknowledged in the media, because she had started the Me Too movement way before an actress had hashtagged it. But why wasn't she heard? Because she doesn't have that microphone. And that's all I was trying to say, that this gets at initiation continues, but on us to be able to amplify this voice for all sexual assault survivors.
I mean, it is, and I'm not critical.
And I'm not saying you're disputing that either, but you are disagreeing on how we then are corralled into this by people that we put our hopes and energy into.
And but first off, I support the people in Hollywood or people in academic institutions who've come out and said these things, because there were other tweets that were then followed up by people who were not in Hollywood. Like, there were thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, maybe millions ultimately of tweets of people doing stuff like this. To me, what if the Me Too movement is going to gain roots, it's going to actually see women who are actually being harassed by their boss at work or by their manager at work feeling the courage to say something like that. And do I believe it's made that sort of impact yet? I don't think yet. And I do fear that the direction that Me Too is being corralled in, because I do think this was hijacked by the Democrats, will take it in a direction where it's even less likely to sink deep roots into the working class. Where how do we to create a situation where more men can speak out about their own sexual assault that they might have experienced, and more women can speak out about not just their sexual assault, but sexual harassment they're experiencing on the job. And that is still the promise of where it could go. I'm just saying that I think by virtue of it going in this direction, it's less likely to go in that direction that builds it from below. That is my feeling. And that's a shame. And it's being sold. It's potentially, the Me Too movement is being used for something that we gain. Like, I don't think people understand this, or the other part that I believe, which is we will lose no matter what happens with Kavanaugh. We lose if he wins, and we lose if he loses. We lose in both cases because we've both bought into. Everyone's bought into this game that the Supreme Court is some sort of highest court in the land, and we have some honorable person there who's going to stay there for life. And now the process, exactly, yes, right. And all that stuff is a show, is a sham. It has nothing to do with justice. It has produced a gulag in this country, and that's all it's done.
Ah, this was exhausting.
Eduardo, man. Yes.
This was an exhausting. Bruce, what happened?
Bruce was like, he said, "Oh, totally, this is very important." He goes, "I really look forward to hearing your take on this." And I went like, "I look forward to hearing my take on this as well." Because I don't know.
There is so much to unpack. As you can possibly see.
But we started with agreement around the Supreme Court.
Right, but I was trying to make sure we stay on point of Kavanaugh. This is obviously just too interrelated and
with Me Too. Yeah.
Symbiotic with the Me Too movement. You cannot separate it.
But there is a separate thing to be talked about even talking about that movement. That I don't know. We'll see.
What do you mean?
Like maybe we have,
clarify.
Like we could have a whole episode just on.
Oh,
that
you're talking.
alone.
Okay, yeah, we could
about sexual assault. I mean, about how to fight for women
and
rights.
society in general around that, and rape culture. I think that should be discussed, which many people deny that exist. All right, so let's finish. Anytime,
so next week
is this? I get nervous, but I can cut that out. But my mind defaults to like what my comfort language is.
Yes.
So then I just think about how do you stop.
It's interesting to watch you switch between the two. I like it. I mean, I think it's pretty amazing.
It's like,
next week we'll try to do. I think we're going to do our interview, unless the world asserts itself again with some craziness.
Right.
So, and I appreciate Bruce being patient, because he understood that we were going to talk about this. What do you all think? If you have any comments about what Eduardo said or what I've said, put them down below in the YouTube thing, or you can comment through iTunes in some way. I don't know how that works. Write your review and tell us how much you.
Please share with all. And write to review where we get most traffic right now. It is iTunes and YouTube, but mostly iTunes would help out because it would reach a larger audience for podcasts. I think people are having challenging time watching us. Some people say that they like watching reactions. So. But anyhow, una reseña por favor, a review please, so that we can have more traffic and reach a larger audience. With that said, we will have the interview with Bruce
hopefully next week. Hopefully we're not lying, and I guess we'll see you then.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.